Ongtengco. My pronouns are she, her. At Arts Alliance, I serve as the Creative Workforce Programs Director and also support our Arts Alliance Help Desk, which offers a wide range of programming to support the field here in Illinois. Um, for those who don't know, just a quick intro on Arts Alliance. Before we begin, Arts Alliance Illinois builds the creative sector's power through advocacy, policy change, and we connect resources to the many individual artists, small creative businesses, arts nonprofit organizations, enterprises that are working within the creative sector to improve the quality of life in communities statewide. And in particular, with around policy and programming, supporting the creative workforce and supporting arts nonprofits who employ creative workers, and the skills development and new knowledge is really important to us at Arts Alliance. As we all know, we are inundated with artificial intelligence tools and the impact and how is it shifting the economic landscape? How is it changing our day to day? We see it everywhere, and we feel a responsibility at Arts Alliance to equip the field with knowledge, to bring in experts, but also artists coming together to really navigate this new chapter. And so we're really pleased to be here today to focus on a specific topic. This fits into our programming and overall mission at Arts Alliance, and that we feel that this kind of knowledge helps us better understand where there are gaps, where we need to be better protecting artists, where there's opportunity to gain and build investment so that there's knowledge spread out to the field. So our advocacy for creative workers, knowing that there's an impact to arts education, and then the public funding that surrounds certainly not just what we're talking about today, but the many in general. We're at Arts Alliance committed to ensuring that these areas are well invested within the state of Illinois, and research that we're conducting and that we've also recently released in our Creative Economy Impact and Assets Report here in Chicago and Illinois, in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois, are just some of the things that Arts Alliance has been focusing our efforts on this year. For those who don't know, again, Arts Alliance has our help desk. So it is an umbrella sort of body of work that is inclusive of webinars, in-person and hybrid events covering nonprofit supports, fundraising, operations, public funding navigation, supporting the creative workforce in the policy and programming areas. We also have a virtual help desk service, so you can visit us at the help desk, talk to a live person, written, scheduling a Zoom, bring your questions. We've answered all sorts of questions at the help desk, and so this is another opportunity at the end of today. Should you want to get in touch with our speakers, should you want to learn more, our help desk is here as a resource. And then finally, before I turn it over and to our esteemed speakers, we have a host of upcoming events and webinars that you'll see, starting with tomorrow, business support organizations, and our partnership with Cook County Small Business Source. We have a series of webinars. We will also be offering a deep dive into the Chicago Art Census with ACRE and Lawyers for the Creative Arts on September 1st. I already put this particular event, for some reason, has the exact webinar registration link, but the September 8th, Access to Capital for Creative Small Businesses is the webinar we're offering. And then we'll be doing an in-person event for those in the Chicagoland area on an artist panel, creative business owner panel, and networking event. Please come to one of the Creative Future Roadshows, which is tied to the new report that Arts Alliance released with Sound Diplomacy, again, around the newest new economic impact data generated by the creative sector here in Illinois. We want to engage stakeholders and a multidisciplinary representation of perspectives would be um, our targeted goals for informing policy and legislative priorities for the coming year, but more importantly, that you are all equipped with the latest economic impact data. So that those roadshow events will be the opportunity to connect with those from your local region to discuss those issues around the newest data. Please visit our help desk, and all of all of these events and all of the mission work that we do here at Arts Alliance is made possible by certainly in the number of funding sources, but really by the power and the investment and commitment of our Arts Alliance members. So consider joining today. It's pay what you can. And thank you, Maddie, for dropping any links in the chat around these events. With that, I am pleased to here, stay connected. Introduce today's presenters. So joining us, we have the Social Capital founder. Many of you probably already know, but some of those for those of you who are based in Chicagoland, Devon VanHouten-Maldonado is first and foremost an artist, but also has several different initiatives. And today we are really excited to have Devon put on this hat for his newest entrepreneurship endeavor with Social Capital. We're also joined today by Cory Garfin. I'm going to copy and paste bios in the chat because I really want to turn this over and maximize our time today with our speakers. So I'll drop bios in the chat and turn it over to Devon and Cory. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over. Thanks, everyone. We're excited to have you here today.
All right, can you all see my screen okay?
Looks good.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much. Arts Alliance, big fans of Arts Alliance over here. So in my day job, I'm the executive director of SkyArt, which is a arts organization, nonprofit for youth on the south and west sides of Chicago, providing free art programs. So I'm sure some of y'all on the call today, we've worked together, we've interfaced together. And a lot of the work that we're going to talk about here today has actually come out of work at SkyArt that we've been doing on our team. So we'll talk some about that. I think this is really exciting for Cory and I because we're both artists. We both come from arts backgrounds. We both went to art school. And so I feel really at home with this audience and excited to talk to y'all about AI. And this is our first time getting to speak with an audience of artists. So really excited to be here. And I'll pass it off to Cory to talk a little about who he is.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks, Sasha and Maddie and Arts Alliance for hosting us here. We're really excited to talk to you all. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Cory Garfin. As Devon said, I came up as an artist, but I've also worked for the last 15 or so years with arts and cultural organizations. I came to Chicago to work with the Chicago Public Library on a space called UMedia, which I helped design when I was back in grad school. And then for about 10 or so years, I was working as an audience researcher for Slover Lynette at NORC, where I was co-director. Always been interested in technology and like Devon, just very excited to talk about the realities of AI with you all. So what we're going to discuss today is really start out with a level setting discussion. How do we feel about AI? Some of the challenges we see about it, some of the things that excite us, just be real about it. And then we want to talk about AI policies, whether you have one, whether you should have one, what it should hold, those kinds of things. And then talk about some of the things that we think of as hype versus reality. So what are things you might have heard and how real are those according to at least today? These things change very quickly. We're going to look at some real world AI in action. And we're going to show you some examples of things that we built, some things around the web, and then show you some practical techniques and tools as well. We actually, before, and we're going to have a Q&A. We're going to, if you do have questions throughout, please include them in the chat. We're also building into this a real sense of discussion. So we want to have a couple of breakout groups if there's time. The first one will probably come after we do the AI policies, hype versus realities. We're going to do a breakout discussion. We find it really helpful to talk in community about these things. So you know you're not the only one asking the kinds of questions you're asking with the concerns that you have. It's been really helpful for Devon and I, so we want to bring that to this discussion as well. So it's not just our voices that you're hearing. And then the second one we'll hope to do after we show you some of the practical techniques and tools.
Yeah, and I think just to say, a lot of what y'all can learn, a lot of what we've learned is just through discussions with peers, right? So we really feel like it's important for y'all to be able to talk to each other, learn from each other. And we want to build some of that in. I love these events where we just can talk about AI. I think everyone's using AI in different ways. One of the first things, oh, actually, go ahead and talk about this quote, Cory, if you want to introduce that.
Yeah, I love this quote. I don't know if y'all know Sinead Bovell. She's a great follow on LinkedIn. She says, if we want to understand where the future is going, follow the artist. I heard her speak at a symposium recently in New York, and she talks about artists as people who tend to look at technology through a cultural lens or use technology through a cultural lens. And I really like that. And so I wanted to put that up here because I feel like that is very kind of close to how I feel about the technology as well.
And obviously, Cory and I are biased, but one of the things we're going to talk about today is the way that we feel like artists are actually maybe particularly adept for this age of automation. We really believe that artists, and I think we have lived this and believe it because we've done it ourselves. We believe that artists can actually thrive in this age because we know how to iterate and experiment, et cetera. So let's do some level setting. I think one of the things that's really important for us to communicate today is that Cory and I are not AI evangelists. We certainly don't want to tell you all that AI is here to save everybody and going to solve all of our problems. You all have questions and concerns, and so do we. So just want to level set by saying that AI is inherently collaborative technology by design. It was literally built with all of our intellectual property without permission. And Cory and I think, are part of a movement to demand equity and representation. So how do we think about AI as something that we all own because it was built with all of our knowledge? Second, I want to talk a little bit about what even is artificial intelligence. There's a lot of, I think, just misunderstanding and incomplete information. I think these tech bros and tech giants want to tell you a particular story about AI and what it is as this like all-powerful being, and we just want to cut through that hype a little bit. AI, the way that we think about it, and when we talk about AI these days, we're really talking about large language models. The baseline math behind artificial intelligence is called machine learning, which is a discipline of statistics. And machine learning has been around for a really long time. But what's changed is that we have massive, fast computing power now. And so what we think about as modern day artificial intelligence, like Claude or ChatGPT, is really statistics, machine learning, with massive computing power and a user interface, right? So that's like the app on top of the AI. So a lot of times what we're talking about, what we're using is an app that is empowered by AI, right? And so I think we also are, while folks are currently figuring out where AI fits, they're building it at everything. There's a chat and everything. And there's a lot of just figuring out what we can do with AI. But just to really level set, like AI has been around for a really long time. And the core statistics that underlie these models actually is not a new invention. It's like the combination of these factors coming together that has created these modern large language models. And we're using large language models as a shorthand for AI as a whole, but AI is actually a much larger field than just these large language models and machine learning. And the other thing we're going to talk about today a lot is this idea of, we hear about AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence. This idea that there's going to be an AI that's going to solve all of our problems and be able to do everything. And first of all, I just don't believe that. I also just don't want like one company to like have such a monopoly. And we're already seeing that happening, right? And that's one of the things we want to resist through building customized intelligence. So at Social Capital, Cory and I build customized artificial intelligence tools, workflows, trainings, and we want you to start thinking that way after today. How are you customizing your artificial intelligence to serve your organization, to save cost, right? If every single a member of your team has their own Claude account, the costs add up, right? And so overall, we argue for customized AI tools and smaller models that'll meet your needs. Okay, let's talk a little bit about artists and artificial intelligence. I know the author David Brooks is a little bit controversial. He's had kind of some political leanings, which you can agree with or not agree with. I don't love David Brooks in any particular way, but I thought that this quote was really spot on for me, for what I think about AI. He said, "My core belief about this whole age is that artificial intelligence will reveal what it means to be human by disclosing what AI can't do." And so I kind of like that take where it's like, maybe AI is going to actually help us be more human. And I just don't believe that there's going to be some, godlike intelligence that's going to, take us over. Artificial intelligence rewards creativity, experimentation, and iteration. So I think in this sense, that's what we're talking about. Artists may have an advantage in the age of automation. Artists know how to experiment, try things, and fail. So thinking like an artist may turn out to be a superpower in this age where repetitive tasks become obsolete. And we've seen this, right, with the jobs that are already effective. It's like coding, right? Like AI's main use case right now is coding. And we want to encourage you all to use AI tools to create more time and space for the creative work that really matters, right? If you run a nonprofit arts organization like I do, there's so much admin, so many repetitive tasks, so many spreadsheets, and that's where we want to use AI. We do not argue for using AI to replace the creative work, though it can be a great creative tool, and there's lots of ways you can be really experimental and weird with AI, and that's all great, but we don't want AI to replace our creative thinking, our experimentation. And so hopefully today you'll have some ideas of how you can use AI to automate some of that repetitive work that takes up a lot of your time.
I think this quote speaks to that as well. This is from an artist named Kelly Bosch. Your specific way of seeing a room, your empathy, your taste, these are not soft skills anymore. The technology is empty without your specific skills to guide it.
I just saw a question in the chat really fast. Sorry,
Yeah.
this recording is going to be shared afterwards, and we're going to share the deck as well.
Yeah. Yes. So just that quote is just something that really speaks to me as an artist, as someone who I honestly feel like there have been some unlocks that have happened with my creativity with AI. And we'll talk a little bit more about the what that comes at a cost of in a moment. But just to talk about AI policy. So these numbers come from a new report from Capacity Interactive, which some of you may be familiar with. It's called the State of AI in the Arts 2026. So about 89% of arts nonprofits are using AI in any capacity, so to speak. But only 29% of these organizations actually have an official AI policy in place. So that's not a lot. It's growing. I think they said last year, the whole report is worth reading. I think they said that's up from about 14 or 15% last year. So it's growing. And I think people are starting to see the need for it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But an AI policy, we think, should cover usage and scope. So what tools should be approved, what tools are not acceptable, or what uses are unacceptable, the overall purpose, why you're using AI in the first place. And then also the second big category is security and governance, especially data security, some of the guardrails, things that you want it to never do, triggers for when to initiate legal review, things like that. Okay. So if you don't have a policy, you probably don't, because not a lot of organizations do. First of all, we can help with that. So that's one of the things we do is help people walk through what to put in their policy. We strongly believe that if you don't have a policy, you actually do have one. It's just that anything goes. Because if you don't agree with your team on how to use things or acceptable uses, people are absolutely using their own tools. So, Devon might be using Claude and I might be using ChatGPT, and those things may talk to each other, they may not. You never know what somebody's putting into the cloud. Um, and definitely, we think the younger employees and team members are using AI. So we need to make sure that we have guidelines in place. We also need to make sure that we keep talking about it. These things change so fast. The technology is improving and just morphing almost every day. So the policies also have to evolve. It also just protects your organization and your intellectual property. So when you're sharing with a free version of an LLM, you're absolutely sharing your sensitive information with the model. There's a saying in tech that if you're not paying for something, then you are the product. So we want to try to avoid that, especially if you're using sensitive data from any of your communities. Um, we all kind of click through to privacy agreements and just kind of check the box. But I think with this, since it's such a new iteration of a technology, it's really important to read through some of these privacy statements, especially if you're reading through it with an eye for your organization. Um, so that's one thing we definitely advocate for. And then always, even if you have some paid plans, you want to make sure that you're checking the right boxes and avoid using personally identifying information with LLMs as much as possible.
And this is where you have to make some decisions as an organization. I think, obviously, if you're an organization providing therapeutic services like SkyArt does, like we have a higher level of compliance to protect our young people's data. We also work with incarcerated young people, right? And so we need to make sure we're following all the laws, like the laws and the privacy protections don't really change that much with AI. And so I think whatever privacy you have in place for the rest of your systems, make sure that you also are following those when you're using AI systems.
Yeah. Can I say one thing before we move on, Devon?
Please.
I saw that there are also some independent consultants maybe joining us. So one thing that I've liked to put into my contracts when I'm working as a consultant is a data use agreement that includes how I'm going to be using AI, either as to understand, to do some data analysis, or even to do some kind of drafting of first drafts of reports or things like that.
All right, y'all, let's cut through some hype, and feel free to put some thoughts or questions in the chat as we're moving through here, and we'll try to pay attention to those. But here are some kind of things that you may have heard about AI, and we're just going to kind of go through some of these and try to level set some reality here. So you may have heard that AI is going to take all of our jobs. And the reality is that we are already seeing job disruptions and layoffs as a result of AI. They are concentrated in, like I said, those repeatable tasks, and particularly in coding. So, it's a little bit ironic. The tech industry is actually the one that's having the biggest impact in this. But certainly we would never advocate for, especially among nonprofits, AI replacing anybody's jobs. I think we come from the perspective that nonprofits almost universally need additional capacity. And so we want to use AI to provide additional capacity, and again, free up time and space for your mission, for the work that really matters. And also, it's really important to say that we have a choice, and we have to insist to political and business leaders that the future of AI belongs to all of us. Again, these big broligarchies have too much power, and we need to be part of an organized movement to resist that. But that doesn't mean just ignoring the technology and not using it. And creatives may be uniquely positioned to be successful. Where we so far have not seen too many disruptions. Although I will say, in marketing and some other industries like that, there have been big disruptions. I think journalism is very much under threat. But I do think it takes some real creativity and problem solving to succeed in this era, and artists are going to be positioned for that. Another thing you may have heard is that AI companies steal your data, and they absolutely do. As Cory was saying, similar to social media, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So if you're using a free version of ChatGPT, and again, this is why it's so important to have a policy, your employees may be using their free ChatGPT account and putting all your organizational IP into it, and it's just going right back to OpenAI, and they're training their model with it. If you turn off those settings and adjust your settings and do not give the LLM or the tool permission to use your data, it won't. Again, these same privacy laws apply here, and there is litigation ongoing around sort of like the IP vacuum that is these LLMs and all the intellectual property that it's used without permission already. And we're eager to see the outcomes of those, and we hope that there'll be some remediation, because essentially, again, these companies have built these large language models on top of all of our intellectual property. So just make sure that you're adjusting your settings so that it's not sharing. Look for somewhere where it specifically says, do not share my data, or because a lot of times it'll be enabled by default to share your data. AI use is harmful to the environment. That's unfortunately very true. These data centers consume a massive amount of energy, and we're hearing, different messages. Obviously, it depends. But one of the things I want to raise today that I think is really interesting, that we're seeing evolve, is these data centers as an opportunity for leverage. So organizing around data centers may be one opportunity for the public to exercise some leverage around AI companies. They want to just shove these data centers down our throat, and they're doing this thing that I think is really important to call out, which is they're going to poor, marginalized communities, and they're plopping down these big data centers because they know that they can, and they push especially small communities around with massive amounts of money and lawyer power, and folks, it turns out, don't like that. And so I actually have been really heartened by the pushback against data centers, and I think that is just one opportunity that we as the public have to organize to resist some of this. All right, that was easy, right, y'all? So let's do a quick breakout session. So we're going to spend about 10 minutes, and I want to just kind of like let's talk amongst ourselves. Here are some discussion topics. We'll get those copied into the chat for you all to see. But where do you personally fall on the continuum between a Luddite who never uses AI and is against it, and an AI convert, someone who has agents working when they're asleep? And for those of you who don't know what agents are sort of like AIs that can work for you even when you're not actively engaging with them. So you could say, hey, go write an app, or go write an app. Are there any particularly effective ways that you have found to use AI across your organization or personally? Does your organization have an AI use policy? And if so, what does it say? If not, are you thinking about it? Maybe you guys can have a discussion around that. So, and of course, these are just discussion topics, suggestions, but more than anything, we want to create space for you all to start having some conversations with your peers around how and when to use AI. So, Cory, if anything else from you before we move into these breakout rooms?
No, again, we just want it to be very open discussion and building community. So please use these suggested topics if they're helpful. Also, just talk amongst yourselves, and we'll pop in and see how things are going too, and just give about 10 minutes. Yeah, like the artist, I put that quote up, Kelly Bosch, who does these beautiful animations that she creates using AI, and also makes her own songs that go with the animations, and is really using it like a tool, like a paintbrush or any other type of artistic tool. I think there are some people who are very resistant to it. I think a lot of them that I've noticed, this is just my perspective and not by any means a scan of like every artist, but a lot of writers have a lot of hesitancy with it, like a lot of creative writers, because partly what Devon said, that so many of the models were trained on the kind of corpus of human written creativity, and so there's a kind of pushback there. But also there's the sense that the things that I do take effort and refinement, and this thing can spit out in a few minutes what I can take months to do. We're going to talk a little bit more about but there are some arts organizations who are kind of banding together to help protect the work of the artist. And a couple of the examples that we'll talk about come from Hollywood, for instance, in the film industry. So I think there's opportunity also to kind of set the terms for how art can be used in these models. And collective power is really the way to do that. I don't know if any one particular artist has that kind of pull, but together that we may have that.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that by saying I think there's been artists for a long time that have used machine learning to make generative artworks, right? I think Holly Hendon is her name or something like that. There's artists that have created digital video installations for since the early 2000s that use machine learning to create like these generative, really cool installation pieces, especially digital video. And then my partner produces the Chicago Underground Film Festival, and there's like in the last couple of years been some really interesting submissions that use AI to create film. I think creating films is famously very expensive and time consuming, and there's there's underground film, so they're very weird. But there's some really interesting experimental work going on with AI and filmmaking. I even know an artist who has used it for like SEO, to drive traffic to their website. So there's definitely a lot of weird experimental AI out there, which I think is fun. All right, we're gonna talk about some real world use cases.
Yeah, let's do. Hopefully that you had a good conversation. We popped in on those. We're not going to ask you to share out with a larger group, but if there's anything that you want to put in the chat that stuck out to you as something you're going to take away from that conversation, or things you haven't thought about before, please do. That'll also be a record for this conversation that we'll keep in the chat as well. So thank you for joining that little breakout. So we're going to talk about how to use this stuff in the real world. So in a couple of conversations that I was in, there's some talk about using generative AI, writing generation in AI, and that's definitely one way to use it. These kind of 5 examples come from something down below. You can see it's called the 5 problem types from the Decoded Futures Prompt Cookbook. So the different ways they talk about it are to create and communicate, to automate the admin, to answer and assist, to sort and scan, and to learn and decide. And we're going to go through all of these in a little more detail. So to create and communicate is really creating what we're talking about, like with emails, other kind of draft, any materials that you might put together, like proposals or anything like that. And LLM optimization is really a way of saying, how is this going to have my voice? What are the things that I want it to do? What do I want it to know about me, so that it has the same kind of things that are consistent from email to email, or from LOI to LOI, those kinds of things. Devon has created a version of an LLM, or a small language model, I guess it's called Scl AI 2.0. And I think you're going to show us a little bit about that, right, Devon?
Yeah, that's right. So it's actually, I was reading this book about AI from the 80s, and they used to call these knowledge-based expert systems, which I like a lot better, even though no one uses that language anymore. So a knowledge-based expert system, you can think about it as like an AI that like works for you. It's built on your data. So a couple of years ago, when these tools started becoming popular, I didn't have a development team at my organization. We had just had turnover. I had recently taken over as the executive director. And I was like, man, I really need capacity in my development team. And so most nonprofit organizations who do grant writing have what is often called boilerplate language. So this is like, a large document of all your program descriptions, all this information about your outcomes, et cetera, right? Sometimes these are dozens of pages long, even hundreds of pages long. So really what I did is I trained a small AI model on that information. Through structuring the data. And actually these days you don't have to structure the data nearly as much. So it was a lot of work for me back then, and now it's a lot easier. But what that means is essentially you're turning this data into a structured CSV file, comma separated value file, like the origin of a spreadsheet. And from there, what I did was I just connected it directly to Google Chat. And so my team can go directly into their Google account. For those of you who don't know and are not in the Google environment, you can get Google Work for free for your nonprofits. One of the things that they do for nonprofits. And so, and then using Google Cloud, which is kind of the developer side of Google Workspace, I was able to create this internal model. And so you can see here that I'm asking it for an RFP. I'm asking it advice on nonprofit management best practices. This is actually a great question. So I have a knowledge base in here. I have train this model with a large database of academic texts on nonprofit management best practices. We had just done an auction, and I wasn't quite sure, hey, how do I account for someone who's bid on an auction item versus someone who's made a donation? So I asked it, according to nonprofit management best practices, that's a key phrase that tells the AI, hey, refer to this data bucket. How should we acknowledge donations that come as auction bids? And it gave me a nice detailed answer. It says when a bid does not exceed the market value of the item, when a bid does exceed. And so this is pulling from a specific data bucket that I gave it, and then it knows who SkyArt is. So it knows what our mission and vision is, right? There's another one. Let's find some other examples here. Yeah, so here's make a proposal, 250 words specifically for our Skyway program at Sasha Elementary. Oh, I was doing this as a demonstration for Sasha when we met. So Skyway is one of SkyArt's pillar programs, and so this is all I have to say, and it knows about Skyway. SkyArt is excited to propose a partnership with Sasha Elementary to bring our renowned Skyway program directly to students. Skyway is a dynamic, free after-school visual arts program designed to empower young artists through creativity, blah, blah, blah. What this is doing is actually literally pulling directly from the language that I provided. And so it's gonna not make stuff up. And what's important here is, unlike a regular LLM where you can copy and paste some language and it'll be responsive, this has guardrails built in where I have a document, and it's actually hard coded in there, like our voice and style guide. For example, SkyArt uses strength-based language. So we don't say incarcerated people, we say folks impacted by incarceration, et cetera, right? And so this model knows how to quote unquote speak like SkyArt. And the reason I like this is because now my team, when they're producing documents, they can write in SkyArt style. So and I would never claim that this produces a perfect result. It's always important to have what we call human in the loop and review. And I know for a lot of people, they don't want to use AI to generate language. That's fine. I think for grant writing, a lot of times we're repeating that language anyway. So this just really facilitates the process. Now, my team was able to dramatically increase the number of grants that we applied for, and last year had the best revenue year we've ever had. And that's obviously not just thanks to this AI model at all. Has to do with a lot of other systems and processes being put in place. But we were certainly able to increase the speed with which we could apply for grants and the efficacy, because now my team can focus more on editing, really making sure that the language is good and specific and makes sense, as opposed to, sometimes we're rushing to apply for a grant and we're copying and pasting, and then maybe sometimes things fall through the loop or are not as high of quality as we'd like. So that's one example. The next example I'm going to show you. Go ahead,
Devon,
Cory.
sorry, there's a question in the chat that says, how do you get your AI tool into the Google Chat feature? Are you using a gem via Gemini?
That's right. Well, first of all, we're happy to help with that because you need to have a Google Cloud account. So you need to set up, and as I mentioned, Google Cloud is kind of the developer backend. So there is some coding, it's a pretty low code environment, and you can totally figure that out. But again, this is what we do. This is what Cory and I offer as a service. But just to say, you can build this stuff yourself. And today, one of the things we want you to take away is that you can build with AI. And that's what we're really passionate about, is helping nonprofits become builders with AI, not just AI users. And it's that kind of empowerment piece that we're talking a lot about. But yes, you, through the Google Cloud environment, because it's all within Google, you could connect it directly to GChat. You can also connect it to Slack. So my team can also access this model within Slack or Microsoft. Like, you can connect it to a bunch of different things. All right, so another thing I want to show you that's you can actually use to start for free is a website called Zapier, right? Zapier is connected to over 10,000 other platforms that are software-based applications, and that means that, for example, if you have a spreadsheet and when you enter a cell on the spreadsheet, you want it to create a deposit in QuickBooks, you can automate that. You can automate when someone writes something in Slack. So at SkyArt, we use it for expense reports. When someone puts a certain emoji in Slack, it actually automatically pops up a Google form. So this is where, like, again, if you have a specific use case that is like you're doing it in a spreadsheet, it's taking your team a lot of time, go experiment with Zapier, and you can create your first Zap is totally free. And then I think it's like, at SkyArt, I think we spend $20 a month on this. But this is just like, you don't have to necessarily build a whole thing and code something. And that reminds me of an important point, which is that almost always these days when we're talking about AI, there's always this software piece of it, which is just code, right? And so a lot of these tools, it's like you might use AI to enable and help you get there, and they might have AI built in, but a lot of times like the execution, like the spreadsheet to the Google form, that's just code. And so what AI has done is made that code a lot more accessible to us. And the quick thing I'm going to show you all quickly here, you can, then this is something that Zapier could do, but here's a way to do it for free. I have this spreadsheet here. Notice I have an outgoing tab and a test tab. You can see Cory, Sasha, and I's emails are here. And then on the back end, there's this thing called app script, which you can open from a spreadsheet, any spreadsheet. I have this little snippet of code here, which is gonna automate an email out from me. So the email is coming from my Skyer email address. It's pointing to this specific spreadsheet. And then here's the body of the email. And again, this is something that we would love to help you all set up. But so what this means is when I go here, you'll notice I have this little email agent extension, which isn't present in any of your spreadsheets. And when I activate email 2.0, it's running the script and it's gonna mark the status as sent. Oh, and so now I just sent 3 emails pretty instantaneously. I'll come over here to my inbox, and here I have this email that came from my Skyer email address. I've embedded an image here with a link. So this link opens to a registration
Devon.
page. Oh, I'm sorry, sharing the wrong tab. My bad.
Yep.
Was that what you were going to say, Sasha?
Yep. Screen is, we're just getting some folks saying they can't see your screen.
Thank you, y'all. Apologies. Sorry about that. I was going back and forth. So here's the email that I just received. And this is a real sample email from Skyer, but you can see you can embed images. You just have to format this email in an HTML format, and that's something that like an LLM could absolutely help you with. If this seems overwhelming, I know it's like, oh, there's code and it's it's scary. It's really actually quite simple, and again, we would love to help you with this. And so again, y'all, these are some of the things that we build. And Cory and I are artists. We don't have a tech background. We built these things by experimenting. Here's a piece that we did for a client. This was civic season is through the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. They have this thing called Wish Walls, which is a project across the entire country at museums, and they wanted a bot on their website for when folks have questions. And so here's this little bot that we made, and this is actually the same infrastructure as the bot that I showed you for Skyer, but it's very simplified. So this bot is a public-facing bot, so you want it to be very limited in scope, right? So it's like, hey, here's what I can do. Here's these questions that I can answer, right? And y'all are probably familiar with some of these bots on, when you need a human help. But for a nonprofit like Wishwalls has a really small team, and they we're getting a lot of inquiries, and so this just helps answer some of those basic questions. But really importantly, can I talk to a human? It should tell you, to reach out to a person. Like you don't obviously don't want it. So here's it provides an email for you, because obviously we're not trying to replace people here. We're just trying to save time. So that's an example of a public-facing type product that we've built.
Yeah.
Cory, do you want to add anything before I keep
No,
going?
I was just going to say that, just to reiterate, that this came from a real need, because the person who asked us to build this felt like a bottleneck. They were getting so many inquiries and often having to respond to similar questions, and felt like they weren't keeping pace and people were waiting on his responses. And then, the FAQ that you see on a lot of websites, the frequently asked questions, often you have to scroll through those to get to where your question might be, and then maybe it's not there. So this is kind of, it's again, not replacing that person, but it's just getting some of those easily answerable questions right up front in front of the public, and then having it be more of like a just-in-time response to what your question is, and not having to scroll through the FAQ list.
All right, y'all. If you don't take anything else away today, I hope you will at least take this tool away. And we're gonna share this deck with the links here. But obviously, one of the biggest challenges that nonprofits face is fundraising. I built Fundella to replace Candid, because Candid is like $500 a month, right? Instrumental is a couple $100s a month. So through this tool, what you can do is you have a profile. And under your profile, you can search any, with all the same uh, filters that you can with these tools, except when you type in a project description with this tool, it uses Claude in this sense. So it has in this case, it has Claude built in the backend, has a database of more than 3.7 million grants, which, because we decided to open source this model, you can actually download that database. So it says, what does it mean to be open source? Right here, you can actually download that entire database. So if you want to experiment and build an app, like please build a better version of this. But what I want to do is like provide this information for free. There's no reason, like this is publicly available data from 990s, and it bothered me that Candid charges $500 a month for this. So I built an app to solve that. And so what you can do with this app is, so see how these are searches that I've saved. So I had searched for art therapy for youth, the Leva Family Foundation, art therapy for youth directly aligns with the foundations because it's in focus on youth development. And so it similarly Candid, it's going to find grantors that match, but it's going to take that a step further by using AI to give an explanation. What's cool here is I have my pipeline, my personal pipeline, and look, I have my SkyArt profile here. When I switch to my SkyArt profile, it goes into this dark mode. You can see the dark mode even carries over to the search. So when I search in this mode, it's going to save to my organizational profile. The organizational profile, I can add my team members here, so you share your organizational profile. And now here's the really cool thing, y'all. I've filled out my SkyArt organizational profile with our mission statement, a description of our programs, a description of who we serve or benefit. And then I have my saved funders here. Now check this out. I'm going to click this button that says generate LOI. What it's doing is it's using Claude on the back end to pull from that profile that I created, match the voice and style, pull directly from the language, and then it's looking at the Leva Family Foundation's granting history, and it's going to match SkyArt's mission because we've already determined that that's a good match. It's going to ask for the median grant size, which is $5,000 from that foundation. And then it's going to pull this. Check this out. So we, historically, right, if you've been in the nonprofit game for a long time, you've probably spent a lot of time in organizations, 990s, looking at other organizations like yours, trying to figure out what foundation would be a match. So this AI has automated that. This says your foundation has previously supported organizations like North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic and Jocelyn in their youth development and mental health work, and our mission aligns closely with this commitment. SkyArt creates opportunities for young people who might not otherwise have access to high quality creative programming, meeting them where they are in the neighborhoods like South Chicago and Garfield Park. Now I can chat with this model say, make this shorter. And so now I can go back and forth, add edits. If you hit this button, it'll copy it and you can paste it right into your own document. So last year, for example, SkyArt sent over 100 letters of interest. And what's important to note here, you'll notice that, and so it's made this shorter. The reason that I built this actually, you'll notice that these foundations, a lot of them don't have websites. I'm sure some of us have seen oh, that foundation would be a good fit. They're funding all these organizations just like us. And then there's no public application process. So what can you do besides reach out via a letter, giving them a phone call? And so specifically for these foundations, I wanted a way to create letters of interest to just send in the mail. So SkyArt literally, we print these, we edit them, and we send them in the mail. I sign them, and that's just a way of getting on, foundations, just getting them introduced to you, right? It's like in marketing, there's this idea of 7 touches. Someone needs to maybe find out about you 7 times. And then the final piece of this app that I'll show you is you can organize stuff by new prospect, LOI sent, in process, approved, denied. So here I can adjust the settings. And then this is a way where you can also keep track of your pipeline. So again, y'all, if nothing else that you take away today and you're on a development team, please use Fundelip. It's totally free. You can have your personal profile. You can share with your teams. And there's 3.7 million grants in here from across the United States. Also, I will say if you're an individual practitioner, that database includes some grants for artists and things like that for filmmakers. And so it includes not just foundations. Newly, I have added a database of artist grants and things like that. And then,
Devin,
sorry,
we have a couple of questions I think are good to pause on
Great.
for a sec. So Kira says, I recently learned that some donors are using AI to guide their philanthropy and often receive incorrect information about organizations, 990s, et cetera. What are some ways to combat this? I'll start with just saying, you always have to verify everything. Like I don't think Devin, you use anything verbatim that comes
No.
from this.
You
Everything
edit everything. You always just assume that if the AI is doing a good job, it's giving you a good first draft. So use the good first draft rule.
yeah. And Devin used the phrase human in the loop previously. Some of you may have heard about that. That just means that nothing is fully automated. Everything kind of has to pass through a person. I actually learned another phrase that I like maybe even a little better, which is called human in the lead. And that is really kind of telling the AI what to do, but then also you're the quality control. Like if there's an organization that it links to, you're not just going to take it as a given that that's a correct organization. You're actually going to look it up and make sure that it's there. So human in the lead is a way to do that. And then, Devin, there was a couple more. Have you received any responses to your AI generated LOIs?
Yeah, we actually have. I think it's just again, it's important to like whether it's AI generated or not. You're introducing yourself to these people. It's like a cold call, right? And so what we do is like, if we get a response, we follow up. If we don't, we might make a phone call. So again, the AI is like it's just facilitating a time-consuming part of it. It's not doing the work for you. AI cannot build relationships. We all know fundraising is relationship building, right? And so, but if AI can facilitate the sending of the first letter and then start building a relationship, and then maybe you send them an annual report, invite them to your gala. But yeah, we do get responses. I would say we get just as many responses as we do if we weren't using AI generated. But again, I think it's really important that it's not just going to Claude and saying, "Hey, write me an LOI to this foundation." It's using your voice and style, describing. So it is using your language. Like the AI is just repackaging your language. So that's one way to think about it. Is it's like, can AI do the sort of copy pasting editing for you as a good first draft using the language that you already provided? So this has a very specific instruction to use that language. But yeah, like I said, we actually had our best revenue year ever, and have attracted a decent amount of new funders and started building some of those relationships.
A question that actually leads off of that is, as you probably know, many foundations say they do not accept unsolicited requests. Do you use your intro letters to these foundations? So do you filter anything that says if a foundation says no unsolicited letters, does that?
I still send them letters. I just think it's good for them to know who you. I think like again, y'all, especially since more and more people are using AI. It's like I don't know if anybody knows anybody who's tried to apply for a job recently. Like there's so many people sending so many AI generated cover letters that then now the people who are hiring are using AI. And so I actually think fundraising more and more is like a numbers game. And so I think like when you can get your organization in front of a funder, even if they say no unsolicited, right? Like especially the bigger grants, it's going to be no unsolicited, no unsolicited funding. However, like still introduce yourself. That would be my advice. And it's like when we're sending letters, it's kind of like, hey, introducing SkyArt, want you to know about us. You got to start somewhere, right? Otherwise, how are they going to introduce you, or how are they going to invite you ever? We cannot expect or rely on foundations to find us. We got to go out there and find them, especially if you're an organization who's growing, looking to grow, doing a capital project, anything like that. And we just know like we've all experienced it, right? Since 2024, like the funding landscape has shifted dramatically. Like 2024, 25 were hard years for SkyArt, and so we needed to do something to increase the number of grants we're applying for and receiving. All right, I'm going to pull up another tool that Cory made, and we'll have Cory kind of talk us through this one.
Yeah. So I built a theory of change builder because in my previous work, we used to do strategic planning, we would do theories of change, and I found them to be very useful if people kind of knew how to use them. But often you would need to bring in a consultant, and that would cost tens of thousands of dollars. It would take 6 months or more. And they can be very useful in terms of understanding if you don't know what a theory of change is, it's basically a way of understanding the impact you want to have on the world. So your kind of vision for how you see your organization impacting the world. But then kind of working backwards to say like, okay, then how are we going to measure these things? And what kind of resources do we actually have to put towards all of this? So there's a process that consultants go through, and I built it into this tool so that people can do it either on their own or with someone like Devon or me, kind of guiding them through it. And it just asks you questions, and it calibrates to kind of your level. If you've never used a theory of change before, it kind of explains things a little bit more. If you're more of a pro, it kind of cuts right to the chase. And then yeah, so it's also built off of Claude on the back end, and it is then gonna create a diagram at the end. I don't think we have one to show necessarily, but it basically is just, gives you those columns of what there you see on the right. So it's impacts.
Oh, sorry, I went away. I was going to try to pull up a diagram.
Oh, there. Does it have?
I think, let me see.
It's okay. Um, Anyway, it shows you from inputs all the way to impacts and how things are connected. And then it also allows you to kind of kick out a narrative. So if you wanted to send a funder, here's what we say we're going to do in the world, and here's how we think we can evaluate that. And you're looking for money for that, for instance. You can also put out a narrative to that respect. If you want to put something into a board book, or a presentation for your board, it can also give you some bullet points. So again, this was something that I saw that was a very useful, I felt, process, but that had a very high bar for people to get access to it. And you needed to pay for these consultants to come in. So Devon and I like to think of ourselves as kind of democratizing some of this and bringing the costs down for nonprofits.
And again, y'all, that is free to use. You can create an account. I was just talking to an organization last week who was going through fundraising, and I was like, you guys need a theory of change, and we know a lot of these smaller orgs are not going to have the $20,000 to hire the consultant. Consultants are great, but again, I just think there's access issues and equity issues with these smaller nonprofits. And so, spend some time with your team doing through lines, and it actually will produce at least a really good draft of a theory of change for you. Cory, I think you were going to introduce this, right?
Yeah. Okay, so some practical techniques and tools. Prompt engineering, we're going to dive into some of these, but just so to give you kind of a sense of what they are. Prompt engineering, the way to talk to an LLM. Again, these are things that are changing, so we're going to talk about what we think of as kind of the most effective ways to do this now. Voice and style, so how to use custom data, your own organizational style guides in these systems, and then equity and access. So language access and cultural nuance in outputs. And this is something that, I know for you, Devon, is very important, using strength-based language, for instance. So how do you make sure that anything that your model puts out, your internal model puts out, is in your language and saying things the way that you want your organization to sound?
I see a question in the chat from Maria about Fundelop, the fact page. Maria, you do need to create an account to access the fact page, but don't worry, we don't do anything with your data. It's all just totally free to create an account. You can log in, and actually we use Google authentication, so it just uses your Google account to log in, and then that's where you can see the fact page. But I don't think you can see the fact page before you create an account. Okay, so let's talk about prompt engineering. I think there is a right way to talk to an LLM, right? I think, again, these companies want to tell you that you can just talk to it like a friend, and you can. But then more and more, y'all, as these companies start taking on even more of the trillions and trillions of dollars of debt that they've taken on, they're going to start having to charge you for your computing. So the function, the way that these models work, is going to become expensive. You can think of it like Uber. Remember how Uber was really cheap at first and they never made money, and then what's happened since? The prices have gone way up, right? And so probably a similar thing is going to happen with these AI models, where eventually they're going to need to make money. They've spent all this money, they have so much debt, and now your tokens are going to start costing more. When we say tokens, that's kind of the currency that these models run on. And so when you ask a question, it uses so many tokens. And so think about prompt engineering as a way to work more efficiently with the model, where it's like maybe you can use one prompt instead of 10 prompts going back and forth and save a lot of computing power. So, and this is from a Prompting 101 guide by Google, also linked here. They regularly update this. I find it really helpful. And there's like a deeper version that's like really advanced if you want to look at that. But essentially, things to include in a prompt would be persona. What's the personality or role that you're asking an LLM to take on? You're an expert grant writer. You're a strategic planning consultant. You're an art critic, right? What role is the LLM playing? What's the task? Like, be really specific about what you want it to do. Help me correct the grammar in this document, etc. Context. What some information about what this is, right? Don't expect it to infer. Again, AI is actually not an all-knowing being. Context is really important. Format, how many words, how many paragraphs, etc. Bullets, and then guardrails. The guardrails one is not included in the prompt guide, and these companies never want to admit that their models make mistakes, but they do all the time. So this is, again, a really important piece of the human in the loop. Always put in guardrails. So persona, task, context, format, guardrails, and here's what that might look like. Here's an example prompt, and I've color coded it and the same colors as here. So you're an expert social media manager for a museum based in Chicago called the Illinois Museum of Natural Wonders. Help me write a blog post about our new exhibition called The Native Plants and Animals of Midwest Prairies. I'm very inspired by prairies because I live right by the prairie over here by the lake, and it's beautiful. The exhibition will feature over 400 species of both live and preserved native plants with sections on medicinal plants and native pollinators. Visitors will also have the opportunity to learn how to cultivate native plants at home. Keep the blog post to 500 words or less, encouraging visitors to bring their children. Do not invent or hallucinate additional details about the exhibition or any native plant species. Ask clarifying questions if needed. And so each of these sections is there. You have your context, you have your guardrails, you have the specificity around how many words. I don't know if everyone's probably had the experience of AI like giving you 7 pages when you just needed like a couple bullet points. So that's where being specific about your prompt. I think new models are getting better at inferring, but again, if you want to say, the new models also use a lot more compute. So if you want to save some resources, especially if you're like some of the paid plans even have limits on how many tokens you can use, and in general you're just going to get a more accurate, effective answer when you use effective prompt engineering. And we're going to talk about now about customizing AI with Cory.
Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat. Okay. So customizing your AI, you can reference custom data buckets. So Devon kind of alluded to this when he was talking about Sky AI, but you can provide your LLM, again, that's large language model, with direct access to your structured source materials. So those can be spreadsheets, they can be more and more, like Devon also said, when we think of structured data, think of how things are laid out in a spreadsheet with, very, detailed columns and rows. Then there's unstructured data, which is more like a PDF or a Word document, something that the LLM might have to search and actually visualize like where things are and what they mean. But you can put all of those into folders, and then you can have these AI models access those folders at the right times. So here's an example in the middle of the page, a proposal for proposal generation. You upload a folder of past client proposals, you name it proposals, and then you prompt the LLM, write a proposal for a new client referencing the folder proposals. Structure the proposal based on the examples in the folder. So it's basically you're pointing it at the things you want it to reference. So it's not searching wide and far. You're kind of constraining where it can look, and then you can keep adding to that the more that you create.
I just want to
yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add a couple good questions in the chat here. Reprompt engineering, how much privacy? What about privacy? How much info about yourself is too much? So, and I said, I think it's really important for individuals and organizations to make these decisions, and that's where a policy is super important. So if you have an organization, you have to decide, right? And what is your current privacy policy? What are you currently sharing with, your other platforms, right? And so I think like have a privacy policy is the place to start, and then have an AI policy. Each organization will have different needs depending on who you serve. When you serve young people, you have to have a different level of privacy protection than when you serve adults because of like legality, right? So definitely encourage talking to a lawyer about that, but do not share any personal information with a free version. I think we cannot emphasize that enough. It is important, and I know y'all, it's like, we don't want to pay for these things as another paid thing, but it is important to pay unless you want it to be ingesting your personal information. And then this other, I thought this was a really good question from Rhiannon. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Is AI's goal to get us hooked on you using the service and start charging? I think one way to think about this is the same way that social media algorithms want to keep you hooked and using their product. That's also social media algorithms and AI algorithms are both predictive statistical algorithms. And so yes, like the AI companies absolutely want to keep you on there. Have you heard about this sycophancy thing? Like they're sycophantic, meaning that they tell you you're right all the time. It's really important to be aware of that stuff. Like ask it to challenge you, ask another model, open a new chat. If the AI is telling you you're a genius, like don't. And there's like a mental condition now where folks are being convinced of all sorts of stuff by AI models, and horrible things have happened as a result of it. So I do think it's important to acknowledge that like the AIs absolutely do want to keep you engaged, and they want you to stay on their platforms.
Yeah, great. Just the second example here on the page is just something you can do trend evaluation. So you upload a spreadsheet or several spreadsheets and you say, I am looking for trends, historic audience trends over time. And you then just point the LLM at that and say, please do this for me, basically. But again, you want to definitely, you want to check the output and make sure that the data is accurate. Okay, so getting the most out of it with customized style guides. So one way method A we talk about is upload and prompt. So you can upload your voice and style guides directly and then prompt the LLA to just strictly, that's all it can talk. That's the only way it can talk. Limit its language and its tone to what's defined in the document. The advantage here is it's really flexible. It allows you to switch and maintain completely different brand voices and styles for different clients. One of the ways that Devon has talked about Sky AI is that it doesn't follow the voice of every individual user as they use it. It's learning from what he gives it to learn from. So those are official style and voice guide documents. It's not just employee by employee. And then the method B is customize internal LLM, deploy a small language model like Sky AI, pre-configured with system instructions that apply your voice and style guide across all users. So that's what I was talking about, I guess, there, Devon.
Yeah, and another thing to consider with like a small internal model, we've run into some clients who are paying for Claude or ChatGPT for all of their employees, and it's like $20 a month or $50 a month or however much for every single employee. But then every single employee, as Cory was just saying, is training their model on their voice and style. And so the advantage of having a kind of internal model is that you're paying for one license that everyone's using that has these really specific guardrails in place. So I'm going to like keep talking guardrails, 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 right? Like really having limits around what's happening, because this technology will just go wherever. And then you might have like one, employee that's writing proposals in one voice and style that's like they, and they've reinforced and you heard this idea of reinforcement learning. When you have your own account, it's being reinforced by you all the time. And so I like the idea of having customized internal models, especially if you're doing language creation or anything like that. It's private. It's your data is protected. You're controlling your data, and then it's like limited in terms of particularly voice and style, but also like the data that it can access and the data it's putting out. Like, the Sky AI, if you ask it something and it doesn't know, it's going to say, I don't know, I don't have access to that training data. And like, I would rather have a large language model who tells me it doesn't know than one who makes stuff up. And the rest of them will absolutely, they'll absolutely make stuff up. But this is again what Cory and I do. So if that's something you're interested in, please tell us. I was also having a great conversation in one of the breakout rooms around this can be a very clarifying activity, just like the theory of change can be a clarifying activity. Maybe you just don't have a voice and style. And so sometimes through the process of automating some of this work, we're clarifying, oh, you know what is our organizational voice and style? And that's a good place to start, like whether you're using AI or not, what's the what tone, what specific word description words do you want to use, what what do you not want to say, like those are helpful activities. And then when it comes to your workflows, if you want to automate a workflow, first you have to define your workflows. That's some of the work that that's actually the majority of the work that we do with clients. It's like building the AI thing ends up not taking that long. What takes a long time is gathering all the information, organizing it, and clarifying that workflow. So it's interesting the way that sometimes just going through the process can actually be very clarifying and being like, oh, this is actually how we want to work, even if maybe you're not doing it that way currently. All right, so and here's kind of an advanced example of what we could do. So this is like an AI assisted proposal workflow. So this would be like an app that we would build that does this automatically, right? So you have some kind of input. Maybe it's a Google form, it could be Slack, Asana, a spreadsheet. A human inputs some information. That form submission triggers some kind of code action. Maybe you're uploading a document. Maybe it's extracting from the web. There's some kind of analysis, right? So you have like a general knowledge base, like, about your programs, maybe it has like a folder of example grants or example proposals or, any number of contracts, right? Like, you could use this to automatically generate contracts. Like, lawyers do this all the time now. And these need to be structured. When I say structured means like you're eliminating things that the AI doesn't need, right? So a PDF, an AI is looking at a PDF as essentially an image, and it takes all this extra computing power to extract the text, and it might not understand, quote unquote, what text corresponds to what, et cetera. So when you structure something, you really strip out all the unnecessary information, logos, images, different fonts, and you parse it down to just the bare minimum. AI's models are getting better at parsing, but it still takes a lot more compute power and time for an AI to understand, again, quote unquote, understand a PDF than it does a text document. So you want to structure that information. So I said PDFs are slow and expensive. CSV, comma separated values, are cheap and fast. And so sometimes that literally looks like the most effective way to train an AI is to literally have a comma separated value that has input and output, question and answer, and then, more is better, right? So you want to have like 100 examples plus, as many as possible. And then knowledge, like this is called context assembly. So you're going to combine the input, whatever basic information, notes you put in that intake form, with your general knowledge base. It's going to combine those two things together and say, okay, in this, in the notes, Devon was talking about Skyway, which is, I know from my general knowledge base, is Sky Arts program for ages 7 to 14. I'm going to assemble that context into an output. It's going to apply the unified voice, brand, and style guide, refers to the general knowledge base, and combines those things. That you're going to engage here. This is where kind of, you're using an LLM. So a lot of this is just happening by code. Like the intake thing is code. It triggers a process that that tells Claude, hey Claude, now look at these things. This is also what they call about agentic system. Agentic systems are kind of like they can work on their own, quote unquote. But again, agentic systems is just AI plus code, and it's like the agent can initiate code and not just provide a text response. So the agent is basically just beyond the chat. But the agent is going to synthesize between the general knowledge base, the context assembly, and the intake. And you can even, in this example, map it to, for example, if you have a template, you can map it to that template. You could have it go to another platform. It could automate it. It could populate a spreadsheet. It could send a Slack message. It could send an email. Whatever your workflow is, there's a solution for it. And then in this case, it's automating and generating a proposal draft from a Google Doc API. An API, for those who don't know, is an application programming interface. So that's how you connect different softwares together. So that's how you connect, your app. So you could connect QuickBooks, for example, for your accounting to a spreadsheet using the Google Sheets API. And I know this is probably overwhelming for folks, but this is just an example of a sort of a more advanced workflow that we would build an app on top of to automatically generate proposals. And again, a good first draft, we use the first draft rule. We are not like generating a proposal and sending it off. We're generating a proposal, editing it, making sure everything's good. But this is cool because it's like going to pull from a folder and then, create a doc, its own doc. So it's like not just a chat back and forth. All right, y'all. So this is what we can offer. We want to collaborate with y'all and really want to help you all become AI builders, not just users. So we work with clients to design, develop, and integrate custom AI tools. We want to empower your team to become active creators rather than passive users. And so, please feel free to reach out. And Cory, I'll let you finish up.
Yeah, we can, that says prompt engineering, but we do more than that. We can help you identify use cases because sometimes just getting started is the hard part is, but it's actually just understanding what are some pain points, what are some things that you want to get better at or take, time off of your schedule for. Create custom tools. So we create these tailored AI-powered solutions, the workflows that we've been talking about, something like Sky AI or something smaller. Workflows that are integrated with whatever systems you're using. So with a lot of this stuff, we're pretty platform agnostic. So we often will use something on the back end like Claude, like we talked about, but we integrate with all these different, Google Workspace for sure. But if you're using Slack or you're using Teams, we can also help with that integration. And then I think, like we've mentioned, our real kind of desire here is to help people feel more confident in using this technology. So training your team, capacity building, professional development, how we can kind of hand off some of this to you and your team so that you can do it yourselves is really what we're hoping to do more of. Okay, just a really quick, like if you were to start tomorrow, use what already exists. So things like Fundelop that you don't have to actually create anything new, just kind of use it and understand maybe a little bit more about the connections about how AI is working under the hood after listening to this. Map your pain points. So think about what do you wish you could spend less time on? What are some things that you don't want to do as much of because you didn't get into this work to live in spreadsheets all day? What are some of those things? And then pick something to automate. So if you could automate, getting your calendar tasks into your email folder first thing in the morning or something like that. Choose something that you can automate and then use Zapier or something else that would help you do that. Getting a little more complex for those of you who have a little bit more experience, you can build an assistant. That's the Sky AI pattern. There are ways to personalize some of these agents through Claude or gems through Gemini. And then, as we said, run your own, which is we train your team to we help you build an environment and then hand it off so that you can evolve that tool for your needs. And we were going to do a discussion. Do you think, I think people are signing off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if we just open up for questions
Yeah.
now, and then
Yeah.
there were a couple. Oh, please.
Can we end
Yeah.
with just this one quote because I think it's really important. The future is not inevitable. We get to decide how to shape it. So like Devon was saying earlier, these big companies want to say AGI is coming, job loss is coming. They implicitly are saying that artists have no rights.
Yeah, trust us with the future.
Trust us with the future. So it's not inevitable. And I heard this from somebody named Ted Tremper, who's executive director of Creators Coalition on AI. This is one of those Hollywood film industry collaboratives that I mentioned. They're trying to set standards for how people can use AI in the film industry. So there are ways to band together. Collective action is a real powerful tool. So yeah, thank you all. Open for questions.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Devon. As you already see in the chat, or for those who are just already sharing how informative and concrete this was. So a big thank you to you both for really responding to what we've been hearing at Arts Alliance around what across the field has been of deeper interest and in sort of knowledge demand and around this topic. And thank you for really spending the time to tailor it. Of course, you would naturally tailor it for the needs of our field because you are of the field as artists yourselves, and it just made the most sense to be doing it this way. So thank you. There were questions in the chat around that lovely FAQ and Vandelup's site, and if there was a way to share that out or access it without creating an account. That's for you, Devon. Not sure how
Yeah,
that
yeah. So
tackle that.
you do need to create an account, but we're not going to share your data or anything like that. It's all totally free, and you can just log in through your existing Google account. So if you have a Google customer, just log in with Google, and then that's how you access the FAQ. But I think you do need to create an account. If you want the database and you don't want to create an account, just email me. I'll email it to you. It is quite big. It's 3.7 million grants, but would love to have folks experiment with that database.
Yeah. And there's the question in the chat. In thinking about developing an AI policy, can you speak to how to navigate the broad array of opinions about even if and how AI should be used? Is this Laura, feel free to come off mute, or if there's any like follow-up or clarification
Yeah, I mean, I
around the
think
question.
thinking about the fact that, you know, at an organization, some people are like, never AI, and some people, and feel very strongly about that. Some are like, no, this is great. We need to, adopt all the things we're talking about here. And knowing that it's important to have that policy and thinking through and wanting to have that, wanting to be, as we approach the topic, sort of how to kind of navigate that, the process to get to a more organized place with it all.
Yeah. First of all, I think it's really important for everybody to feel heard. And we are hearing from, a lot of arts organizations that people have pushback against, especially like the environmental cost of this technology and things like that. And the misinformation is a big one. Um, so I think I would go back to the sense that like even if you don't have a policy, people are still going to be using it. So at least trying to wrap your arms around like how people should use it in your organization. So that's one thing that I think is really important. And the other thing that I would kind of point to is to get there, if you're not quite ready yet, actually, Chicago Public Library has a really great approach to this where they have what they call AI ambassadors. So they're a group of people from across different departments who are given a little bit more leeway and time to play around and then report back. So they are a smaller group, but they're meant to kind of break things a little bit, not obviously the larger policy of the Chicago Public Library is supposed to play with tools and to see how they might be useful. Um, and so some of the hesitancy that you're talking about, Lara, may come from the unknown. And so the more people can explore and understand, like, oh, okay, here's what Zapier can do, or here's what these agent builders can do. I think it's easier then to say, okay, here's how we want to use them.
And I see a question in here from Mark about existing software to discover something was written by AI. Mark and others, if you type into Google AI detector, there's many softwares. So what I would recommend, when I was teaching, I was using this a lot. It's actually, and it's like once you kind of like get a feel for the voice of AI, it's pretty easy to detect. But I would recommend using a couple different softwares at once because one might be like it's for sure AI generated. Most of them give you a percentage of generated by AI. But yeah, just type AI detector. I know Grammarly has one, but you have to have a Grammarly account. So yeah, check that out. But there's lots of tools available.
Yeah. Also, just I don't know if anybody saw this, but Anthropic is starting to watermark their text. So even if you copy and paste from AI, it's going to be there indelibly. So that's something to be aware of as well. I don't know that people are kind of looking for that necessarily, but just to be aware of.
There's also a question that Aaron asked around avoiding using personalized ID information, which I want to say in terms of some of the popular large language model platforms that are being used. If you want to just reiterate, Devon or Cory, around why we really caution against putting any sensitive or personal information into those tools.
Yeah, I
Um,
think
can I just ask a clarifying question?
Please.
What is personalized information, and where would you put that? I mean, I'm thinking that you meant when you create an account or something, but it sounds like you're cautioning against that when you're putting in content.
yeah, for sure. So
Okay,
Aaron,
okay.
what I think we're cautioning against is like, your employee has a free chat GPT model and they upload a big, and I swear this happens, y'all. They upload a big spreadsheet of all of your individual donors with their contact information, right?
Oh,
Like people are doing that kind of stuff every day, and that's the kind of stuff you want to be careful about. It's great to like, upload a spreadsheet for training data, but just be cautious, especially if you're not paying for it, around what you're actually putting in there. If you're paying for it, it's more protected. But like again, read the privacy policy, make sure. And yeah, I mean, I think to your other point, Aaron, if you're signing up for these tools, like they have your personal data already. That's maybe where having an organizational account I think is important. And I think it depends on your organizational comfort, your personal comfort, right? I know there's like a lot of nonprofits that are run by one or two people, and maybe they have their personal account. But if your nonprofit has, 5, 10, 15 plus employees, that's where I really think we would encourage you having organizational accounts so that like each employee doesn't have their own account.
thank you.
Just a question for folks to note, because I found it so valuable to demo. I know we got this preview into these specialized tools that Devon and Cory respectively wrote and created to support the field, and we got to see a brief demo of that. But if anyone wanted to follow up and just get their own demo, Devon and Cory, is that
Please.
something they can do? Just reach out to you. I know that's
Absolutely.
valuable. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to spend the time with you. Happy to do a free consultation and meet with you all. Again, we're going to share this deck, so you'll have links to these things. Fundelop's totally free. Throughliners is totally free. But we'd love to hop on a call and show you how to use them and talk about what your needs might be.
Yeah. Wendy, it looks like also asked about sensitive organizational issues. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think it goes anything free. There was some story that came out recently that some chat information was showing up in Google searches. So it's like try to control as much of your environment as you can, which unfortunately means paying for some of these models usually. But yes, anything sensitive, especially if you work with minors or if you work in the health fields at all with HIPAA information.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will say to Wendy's point. Oh, sorry, quickly, Sasha. To Wendy's point, I have found it really useful, for example, and I know that some folks like, right, maybe you have a new manager and like conflict is hard, right? Actually, like in some of these instances, like role playing with an LLM around this difficult conversation actually can be really useful. So I actually think that's a really good use case for something like this. Like, hey, I need to have a conversation with my direct report. They've missed this deadline 3 times. Like, I'm feeling like this. Like, can you help me, create a strategy? So I think that's actually can be really helpful.
Right on the money. I was just going to name that sometimes it can be helpful to ask for curated just questions. Again, draft starting point for how to approach. But ultimately,
Looks
I
like
think
Wendy wanted to say something.
yeah, Wendy, go for it, please.
Yeah, if I could. So I guess one of my questions is, okay, so where does this go? I mean, okay, I have a Gemini account. Like where does this go beyond my own record?
Yeah,
Question.
So Wendy, when specifically with Gemini, in the bottom of your chat window, you should see an asterisk that says Google does not use your information to train our model. If you see that, what that means is that Google does not have legal permission to use your information to train their model. Now, is Google storing your information? Absolutely. Every platform that we use for anything is storing your information. It just means that you are legally the owner of that information. So, if you just have some legal protection there, but I would always look for, whether you're using Gemini or something else, that asterisk that says we're not using your information, because storing and using is any platform you're using is storing your information. But using it to train their model or selling it, right? That's the thing with the social media and advertising these days. They all sell all of our personal information, right?
Any other questions?
All right. Well, I guess with that, you can always contact Devon and Cory directly following this webinar today. We'll be sending a follow-up message that'll contain the slides and a link to the recording from today's session. And then we'll include also the resources and different upcoming events that we have coming up at Arts Alliance, but also Devon and Cory's contact information to be able to contact for specific questions that come up later, a demo that you might want to see for yourself one-on-one. You see their emails in the chat. I'm going to just also drop a bunch of events in there for folks that want to in advance take a look at some of the upcoming webinars. A huge thank you again to Cory and to Devon. Invaluable information for the field today, and we are so grateful that you took the time to meet the need so directly and with such care and attention. So with that,
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here all